Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And I am delighted to welcome my guest today, who is Bronwen Logan. Good morning, Bronwen.
Good morning.
And I think it is very much good evening to you because you are on the other side of the world. And though the sun is shining brightly here, it is dark where you are. So where are you?
I am just outside of Sydney in Australia. So it is evening and it's winter time. Well, it's autumn. So we're going into that, longer nights and cooler evenings.
We're just getting over that.
Yeah.
So uh, it feels like a distant memory at the moment with the sun shining.
Lovely.
So you are here because you have written this amazing book called The Reiki Source Book. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it is absolutely perfect for anyone starting off on the Reiki journey, teaching Reiki in the middle of learning Reiki. It's great for all. But for those who have heard of it and know nothing about it beyond the fact that it's supposed to be a healing thing, what is
Yeah.
it?
So, well, it comes from Japan. And it began in the early 1900s in Japan, just where Japan was going through a lot of changes and influx, and it was the same time that uh, different schools of martial arts were setting up in Japan. So, things like judo, kendo, aikido, these were all ex-samurai people who the samurai were disbanded. So they all started schools and started teaching the public. And Reiki, although it's not a martial art, it has a lot of similarities, and the founder was also born into a samurai family. And he did say in one of the manuals that we have at the beginning, he did say, it's wonderful how these things get passed along from through the families, and now he's able to bring things to the world. So we know aspects of it do come from the samurai family history, and other aspects came through his own practice. And basically, if we look at what he did, we can sort of see what it is. He used to do fasting and meditation on spiritual mountains in Japan. Luckily, we don't have to do that. And then he had a sort of an understanding of energy work. And when he came off the mountain this one particular time, he realized that that energy work also incorporated a healing aspect to it. So that means that it was he could put his hands, for example, on himself or on his family, and then the energy was moving more and shifting. So whatever was wrong, whether it was in the body or in the mind, if emotional, then these things started to shift and change. So it's quite unique. But actually, at that time, also, he was the center of a lot of those types of practices. And I think it was because of the samurai families having been disbanded. But also, there were people who had hundreds and thousands of students, and they would all come together and meditate and do hands-on healing work together, for example. So, yeah, that's sort of the origins of it. And he was one of many at that time, but a lot of those practices no longer exist today. But we're lucky that the system of Reiki came across to America just before the Second World War and flourished there. And then we've also gone back to Japan and seen there was small bits of it there, and how we've been able to find out more about its origins, which is all of that whole history is in the Reiki source book.
I love that. I hadn't actually heard anything about the history of Reiki.
Yeah.
So beyond knowing that it came from Japan, that was it. So, finding that in the book and listening to you, what I find truly inspiring is that this is an example of how knowledge of certain practices historically was hoarded and
Yeah,
kept secret. And the beauty of what happens when somebody comes along and says, no, I'm just going to share this with everybody. And I
absolutely.
find that at this time, particularly when there is a lot of talk about secret societies and the manipulation of ancient wisdom, the corruption of ancient wisdom, we need to have this spirit of breaking it up and letting the water run clean again so that everyone can learn and be empowered and become a source of healing in their own right.
That's so true. And I love that last bit that you just said, because that is the thing about the system of Reiki. And look, it has gone in different directions and they haven't all been in line with what I'm about to say. But if we look at the foundation of it, it was all about you, your own healing. It's not about people doing things to you or making things happen. It's just supporting you in being open for your own healing. So no one can make you better, you know. This is, I live in my universe. You, Anna Isabel, live in your universe. In my universe, I have that option to be able to change my mindset to a way of understanding that I can become balanced. I can become whole. I can remember my interconnection with everyone and everything, the flow of the universe. And it's not up to some external practitioner to make that happen for me.
No, and it really is about empowerment. And people make the mistake of thinking that that's a selfishness. No, we need to feel empowered and secure in ourselves if we are going to be of any help to anyone. And the man that you've been talking about is a fine example of that. It was his self empowerment that enabled him to do what he did to benefit so many from his generation. And of course, his legacy lives on and is thriving. So, how did you find Reiki, or how did Reiki find you?
Yeah. Well, I think I've always been interested ever since I was young. When I was young, when I finished school, I actually studied performing arts. And I think I studied performing arts because I was interested in humans and how they are and why they do things. And so, really, I went from that to coming at it from a different angle and became interested in meditation. So, finding out more about myself through that angle, if you like, and but never really finding something that totally clicked. And it wasn't till I actually studied the system of Reiki, which I did when I was in Nepal. So I was there for a number of months and did that, and it was like a light came on for me. It was just, the right time in your life, the right everything, and I was just totally open to doing something that would help me be a better person, hopefully, more self-awareness, and that it was a system that could also be used with other people, if you like. So it was a way that I could do something good, I guess, for other people and my own small world.
I like that. So it's you kind of come across it, you were interested, you learned, and here you are. Um, what was the journey from that moment of discovering it to actually then writing a book about it? How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, when I first I had read a book about it. Oh, and I did know about it previously. A friend of mine in Australia had done it, and I just hadn't come to the point of meeting someone who, whatever, that I was going to do it. So when I did do it, the guy that I studied with, it was the right time for me to do it. And he was someone who was, I don't know, he wasn't, this is going to sound awful, but he wasn't like the best teacher. And his teachings were a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this. And he didn't know much about what he was teaching, but the essence of the practice was there. So I was very curious, wanted to know more, and kept asking questions. And he didn't know the answers and didn't want to find out more, I guess. He was quite happy with the way things were. So it really inspired me to find out more. So, it's that whole thing of something that might, some people might consider is a bad thing, right? Was actually a really good thing. And it really inspired me to find out more and to be the best teacher that I could be. So, in that, it was about collecting information from all around the world. It was just at the time where the internet was coming in, right, for all of us. So I was at 98 when I studied, and the funny thing was that, yeah, I could just create, well, a very, very long web page. It was one page that just sort of went forever, and that you just kept scrolling down. And I could contact other people. Yeah, I wrote the book with my ex-husband. And so, we both were active in researching, obviously. So we were contacting people all around the world through the internet. It was magical. And getting manuals from all different sorts of people and putting all that information together and then working out timelines of who knew what, when, how, and putting that all into a book. So that's how it came about, basically. Yeah.
What I love is that it is really the heart of Reiki. And there are so many of I was going to say the Eastern disciplines that experience this when they come into the West, where there's
Yeah.
this separation from the heart, which is the philosophy that underpins the practice.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about yoga as a classic example of that. People
Yeah.
treating it as though it is merely an exercise when it is not.
Mm.
And also, then I hesitated because as I was about to say that, I hesitated because I thought about my own practice of astrology and how that too has lost its heart in the hands of many astrologers because they are treating it as a system where in actual fact there is a real philosophy
Mm.
in it.
Yeah, I love that.
And
Mm.
the heart of astrology is that philosophy, in the same way that the heart of all of these practices is their philosophy. And in fact, their philosophies kind of interlock because they are saying the same thing often from different perspectives. So this is why I find your book is so important because it's putting the heart back into Reiki. In order for us to understand truly what we are doing,
Yeah.
beyond treating it like a mechanical function, we need
Yeah.
to understand that because then that will make us better practitioners.
Yeah, uh it's almost like a common sense, but it's also a very deep level of common sense, isn't it? And I always say there's lots of truths, but there's sort of like this underlying truth, and that's where everything connects and it all makes sense. And then there's all these other truths that just we we make up or we believe for a moment, or and those things can help us for a while. They can be relative to someone else's truth. They can all be relative. They can all be important to us in a moment, but they're not that really deep truth. And that is the thing I always find, if when students are learning, if they can they can get down into that level, then they can answer any question they have about their practice because it makes sense.
And it's also, I think, even deeper because it is the difference between wanting a practice for what it gives me and a way of life that immerses me in the practice in order to help me to better connect to source and to others.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
Yeah. So that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is the ultimate practice, one that can be just a part of everyday life and yet be so incredibly meaningful. And I think there's with Reiki, we have a number of different practices that we can do, and they really support people in different ways. So it depends what your particular interest or skill is. So, we have things that, like, maybe it's chanting, that is something that you feel really connected through, or specific meditations, or even just the idea of the hands-on healing aspect. So there's different things. Oh, and most importantly, we have these things called precepts. And if you look at all practices across the world, all spiritual practices, they all have very similar elements, don't they? Just slightly different depending what culture they come from. Yeah. But the precepts are probably the most important part of everything that we do. And they're incredibly simple, 5, 6 lines, and nothing too deep. And yet, it's the everyday life integration of these things that make the difference. I mean, if you can do that, then I guess you'd be an enlightened being with something so simple.
So give us an example of a precept.
So they begin with like a little preface which says "for today only," and what that means is that in this moment, it's the now that everyone talks about. So, but it's put in this nice way of "for today only." So it's giving us this little option of, like, so just now, don't no other time, just now. Yeah, do not anger. And a lot of people think, oh, but yeah, anger's good for me, right? But anger, it depends. It's all about semantics as well, because anger itself is a dangerous force because it's something that is out of control, right? It's different to something like wrathful compassion. Wrathful compassion is where you're inspired to do something which makes a change, and you're doing it compassionately, right? So we can see those differences in what that might mean. And then we have "do not worry," which, easy to say, obviously, but I think women especially, maybe not so much today, but definitely my mum's generation, and that whole thing of, like, a way of showing love is by worrying. Oh, will you be okay? Can I do this? Oh, is that, there's this whole way of loving that is all about giving away your energy. It's like my worry goes out there, and I'm left feeling empty because I'm not able to function properly because I'm sending it all out there to something that's futile. I mean, worry is not an action that actually gets you anywhere. It just goes round and round and round. It's not constructive, right? It's not like saying, oh, this isn't right, I'm going to fix it. That's a totally different thing. Yeah. And then there is to be grateful. I mean, you know, it's that thing. It's just an upwelling of joy when we are truly grateful for things, and experiencing that joy even in times where it may not be great, bringing gratefulness to life. And not gratefulness just because you've got a better house than someone else, or you know what I mean, like not that sort of gratefulness. It's the gratefulness for just being me here now, us. Yeah. And then to do your work diligently. And this is just about doing everything that we do with a love, commitment, and care. So we put our heart into our lives. And finally is compassion. And that is compassion for ourselves, compassion for others. In fact, the Japanese word for that is hito. And hito means for myself, but it has a double meaning. And the double meaning is others. So we get both in the same word. And that's really beautiful because it's that lovely interconnection with everyone and everything.
I like that. Excuse me. I like it very much. So we have the precepts and we have the healing. And before I ask you about the healing,
Mm.
we're talking about how at its root, at its core, this is a practice and a way of life. And I think the image that you gave us of this wonderful man who gave us the knowledge of Reiki on the top of a mountain in meditation, having fasted or fasting. We know that that is deep contemplation and deep connection to source. And you then said, thankfully, we don't have to do that. There is something, I think, about purity there, which is a part of every practice I have ever heard of.
Mm.
What do you feel would be the, let's call it the modern version of incorporating that into our lives in order to have the strongest energy within ourselves and be the best Reiki practitioner we can be?
Mm. Well, that's a good one. I'll think about it while I say something else. So, what I think is that if in Japan, the person who starts a new, um, I'm using the word system. I hear what you were saying about the word system before, or philosophy, right? Whatever, practice, like an art. An art's a good word, right? So, whoever starts a new art actually has to be someone who has had moments of satori or enlightenment. You can't start, this is like traditionally, right? You can't start your own new practice with your name attached to it if you haven't had those moments. And I like that because it means that you've gone through something, that you have evolved. And it may not mean that you may not be like, because there's this idea that you don't have to be, well, ideally we'd like to be always enlightened, but we can have these moments of enlightenment, right? So it gives us something also that is manageable, I guess, to try to attain. And so within the system of Reiki, if we look at the founder, Mikao Usui, then I think for practitioners of this practice, we want to follow in his footsteps to some degree. It's a different time, different culture. Yeah. For example, back in those days, they also you talked about contemplation, deep contemplation. They used a tool for deep contemplation, and it was poetry, right? Because poetry, if you look at a poem might be a couple of lines. They use 5 lines, these poems. They're called waka. And that poem, if you were to expand its meaning, you could write a small book. That's the gift of poetry, that it condenses things down to something that has so much insight into it with just a couple of words, or how those words are also put together. Yeah. So that is something that they used to do as well to support themselves in going into this deep this deep contemplation and growing of self-awareness. So today, we're not really big on poetry. I mean, I know a lot of people say they love poetry. I love poetry, but still, it's not commonplace, if you like. Yeah. And this was poetry, by the way, written by the emperor of the time and the empress as well. And the emperor wrote over 100,000 poems, and she wrote over 30,000 poems. So today, we can go back and we can use those tools, but do we totally connect with them? You know, I would like to think we should try, because I think maybe if you talk to Reiki practitioners today, in fact, I was teaching today and this woman had learned somewhere else, and she's like, you know, there was, I always felt like there was something missing. And I think that's it, right? So though we want to be modern practitioners, it doesn't mean we have to head off into the new age world or create new things or make new things or do new things. We need to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is this very deep foundation, common element that we need to understand and know for ourselves. And the system of Reiki has a lot of different ways for us to do that. And some of them are more cultural than others. And I personally like the cultural aspect to it. I feel like it gives me constraints. So I've got some sort of boundary to what I'm doing, rather than just going, oh, I could do anything, you know?
It is about a discipline as well and a commitment.
Yeah.
And I think that any practice that we choose is requires some dedication and commitment and some
Yeah.
say devotion. And I think that you're illustrating that beautifully. I would also add that keeping ourselves as clean as possible is helpful, which would mean being choosy about what goes into our minds, choosing to watch or listen to things that nurture the soul,
Yeah.
rather than bringing us down into vibrations of fear and worry, which are extremely prevalent, more so now than ever before in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that we do need to do that to help us to continue to vibrate at the highest frequency possible for each of us. I think that I would also add is important. So I have decided to do my Reiki 1 course.
Hey.
How so for those who are doing that, hooray.
Mm-hmm.
How do we develop it beyond going to classes?
Mm.
What do I do? Do I practice on others? Do I practice on myself? Do I meditate? What do I do to nurture this practice when I'm just at the start?
Yeah. Well, we we learn a very basic foundation meditation, which actually morphs through the whole system. So it is something which I feel is a meditation practice that you could do your whole life. So there are a lot of extra little practices within the system of Reiki that you could do. However, I feel like the one major one that we learn in Reiki 1, right, is the one that should stay with you your whole life. And isn't that beautiful to have something that you don't need to play with, um, think that, oh, be, I need to, you know, do something bigger, better, right? Imagine having something that was already that. And that meditation is there in the first level. And I think it could be almost all you need, right? The precepts, of course, is the other thing. So what I would say is that when we talk about healing, yeah, you spoke about healing. When we talk about healing, to heal means to be whole. So to be whole means to be balanced as far as I'm concerned. So we're always trying out, that's what all our bodies do, all our minds do, all our hearts do. They're always trying to find balance in themselves and with each other. And that's in every moment of my life. When I'm just speaking to you, some part of me is saying, oh, that's going to balance out nicely with something else in me. And also, if I have problems in my life, which of course I do because I'm just a normal human being, so the problems that I have, my balance is going to try to work around those things possibly and still try to find balance, right? And then, so this is always happening. Healing is working with all of these elements and trying to be the most balanced being that I can possibly be. So I think meditation is really helpful for that because it gives us more self-awareness. It gives us the purpose of meditation is focus, and also that's the first stop. Second stop is to experience what it means to be a part of the universe, my universe. So to not think that I'm just a little cookie cutter me, that I'm actually a part of all of these things. So meditation, you can do that every day. You could do from 5 minutes to an hour. Yeah. Build up, work with that. The precepts. I mean, when I first started, I stuck them all around the house and in the fridge, in the toilet, you know. So you can just bringing them to mind. Contemplate them when you walk. Talk about them with people. Yeah. These things, very simple. See, the system of Reiki is not some big, difficult thing. And I know a lot of people think of it as a hands-on healing practice. That is an element of it. And the reason is because we have physical bodies, and it's so beautiful to actually feel the nurture, the care, the love that hands give us, whether it's our hands on ourselves or hands on others in a safe, non-sexual, loving, caring way. That is, we so many people are, what do they call it, skin starved or something like that. I don't know, there is a terminology for it, but we, a lot of us are. If you're not in a permanent relationship with someone, are you getting touch? Are you touching others? And we need that. We know there's that research that they did in the 80s on the poor children, the orphans in Romania, that their brains did not develop because they were not touched, and they ended up with mental and physical handicaps. That's why we cuddle babies, and it stimulates everything. Everything starts growing, touching, all the little synapses start connecting in the brain, and we grow. It's a part of being human, so it's a very important part of us. So as a part of a healing practice, I think it's perfect. It's beautiful.
That is just a gorgeous way of putting it. I love that. What about a master practitioner? So what makes a master practitioner a master practitioner?
Okay. Mm. Well, I am hesitant to use the term master because I have to tell you, most people have done a 3-day course. right? You're not mastering much. But there is, this as I'm talking about as a teacher. So I would rather use terminology like someone who's done a Reiki 1, 2, or 3 course is a Reiki practitioner because they're practicing. That's the idea anyway, right? And then someone who is working professionally might be a professional Reiki practitioner. Or if they've done the 3rd level, they'd be a Reiki teacher because they're teaching. So it's sort of more common sense language, I guess. And I think, that building up is very ego based and it can create problems. And people have maybe then too much expectation on themselves, creating worry, yeah, and things like that don't go along with the precepts. And also it could be creating expectations for others as well. So we want to be kind to ourselves, and we want to be honest, and we want to uh, not pretend to be something that we're not. So, what was your question? It was
No,
actually so.
you answered it. And actually, I
Oh,
think that's exactly right, because I would say you could only be a master when you have acquired humility. That's what I would say, because
yeah,
the title is not about status and it's not
yeah.
about achievement. It's about wisdom and experience. The very things that inspired the man at the top of the mountain to come down and share what he knew and learned with everybody else. So I
I was just going to say, in Japan, you would call someone a sensei, your teacher, but you'd never call yourself sensei. Do you see? Yeah.
exactly, it is the humility, the honoring
Mm,
of the wisdom. And
mm,
I think that is a beautiful note on which to remind everyone that the book we are discussing is called
mm.
the Reiki Source Book. I'll be putting a link to it in the description box. And Bronwen, if people want to find you, how do they do that?
They can find me at Reiki with Bronwen, and that's Bronwen. And Reiki with Bronwen, I've got lots of web classes that I have taught, recorded. I've got lots of meditations, all lots of really beautiful things that you can do to help bring you into that space of self-care, healing, nurturing. Yeah.
So it's Reiki with Bronwen dot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be sure to be putting a link to that. And I want to thank you so much for the book, for your time today, and all the wonderful sharing that you have done with us.
Oh, thank you, Anna Isabel. It was really a great delight. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. And I remind you that in the description box, you will also find my website and my Substack. And next time, we will be talking about angels. Until then, have a great week and goodbye.